360 years after a nuclear holocaust ravaged mankind, throwing society back into the Dark Ages, the world is fraught with chaos and superstition. The new rulers over the masses of humanity are the techno-priest of the great god, endowed with scientific knowledge lost to the rest of humanity. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Fritz Leiber's Gather Darkness. Gather Darkness is a 1943 novel by Fritz Leiber, and sort of the first real novel I've read by the author. I've read his first three Fafhrd and Grey Mouser books, but those are really just short stories compiled and put together. Anyways, this was originally serialized in the Astounding magazine. It's the 24th century. Christianity is a thing of the past, and the new religion of the great god is supreme on earth. Brother Charles is a priest of the hierarchy, though a low-ranking one. The setting is rather dystopian, where people's lives are dictated by the theocratic government. The biggest teller of this sad setting is that dogs are extinct, which is really sad. Anyways, the government makes itself seem blessed by the so-called great god by using technology to fool people into thinking they can perform miracles. One of these pieces of tech the hierarchy has access to is the Rods of Wrath, which may have been some inspiration for the Star Wars lightsabers. The two factions of the series also remind me somewhat of the Jedi and Sith, but that's kind of beyond the topic. Anyways, Brother Charles, like I mentioned before, is our main character. He is disillusioned with the hierarchy and he decides to rebel against it, which gets him caught up in the schemes of the opposition to the hierarchy known as the witchcraft. He's definitely a dynamic character. But we also have Brother Trulian, who is one of the less important characters. He does not have much depth, but he is kind of there for comedic relief, though he is also one of the points of view for the hierarchy, though he doesn't have much time spent on that. He is a companion of Charles at the start of the book, and it's someone Charles doesn't really like. Shortly in the story, their duties together have a woman being accused of witchcraft. Of course, this is bogus, as the witchcraft is also technically a creation of the hierarchy, just in their way of, ruling everything and having to make it look like there is some enemy that things can be blamed on. And of course, this story starts really quickly, actually, as we get the first parts from him, and where he, in his own inner monologue, says that he is mad. So we also have the character of Shalsonaria, who is a recalcitrant laic woman. She poses an intriguing mystery, and she is somehow connected with the priest Gonifus, who is really the main antagonist of the story, who is one of the archpriests of the hierarchy. Beyond that, actually, women make up most of the witchcraft, but its leaders are men, and the hierarchy has a sisterhood, but we see none of them. So this is mostly a story focused on the men, which is kind of a thing of the times, but it was still kind of sad. The tech used for pseudo-divine power is quite interesting. The people are slaves to the priests, essentially, lacking knowledge of the truth. But then again, we do get some good questions posed, like, what is truth? The priests themselves are a blend of lawyers, judges, scholars, executives, artists, and statesmen. Though they're all proponents of a god, none of them believe in. While the state is therefore a religious organization, it did remind me of 1984, though the differences are there, of course. We also have some very long speeches in this book. For instance, there's one very long one at the beginning. It's rather enrapturing, and it's in the first chapter, and it sets up a lot of the background, and then gives us the opposition and the hierarchy in the city of Megatheopolis. The hierarchy itself has several factions, and the politics of this sham is largely one of the main focuses. We get a point of view from the antagonist Gonifus, like I mentioned previously, who is, again, one of the archpriests, and later is kind of working his way up the social hierarchy. And then he is also the leader of the realist faction, and there are some other factions as well. They're not quite as important. So he is, though, largely in control. His ambition is very fun to explore, and it goes about where you'd expect, but in the end, it's I guess I could ask, what do you do when you get all that you want? So, and then we have like good stuff about them using fear against the people. And then we also have good utilization of irony. There's nice chats on individual freedoms and perceived utopias, with some nice quotable lines in several instances as well, which I wasn't expecting, though I do know Leiber is quite a great writer, honestly. And then there are some horror elements at the beginning, at least, until the mystery is kind of solved and it's not as scary anymore, right? Though Leiber does include elements like this in just about everything he writes that I am aware of. They weren't really chilling, but they were kind of creepy and ominous at times. And then, of course, there are the witches in this, a coven of them led by a mysterious warlock. The witches have familiars, which are essentially monkeys and seem to be a sort of homunculi, somewhat reminiscent of the Wizard of Oz. This coven is the opposition to the hierarchy, serving the opposite of the great god, Sathanas, who is just straight up Satan. They admitted it is so as well. They're really the good guys, but are cloaked in bad guy raiment of sorts. It's quite interesting. But then, like I mentioned before, Jarls is not a static character. He goes through some great changes, and it's kind of a rough time for him overall. I felt for him after some particular unfortunate things transpired, and it's definitely not one of those stories that everything good happens as a good guy and the main character is a static, like, awesome guy. I mean, Jarls has his shortcomings as well. They're actually kind of made kind of obvious very early in the story. Overall, this is a fun dystopian sci-fi that focuses on a few characters and on an interesting story, and is of course told by a master of science fiction and fantasy. It does open up the world a little bit with world building, but not so much. It's mostly focused on this mega Theopolis and the witchcraft and the hierarchy. And so we do get a little bit more world building at the end, but it's not really explored so much. But it is quite entertaining, and considering that it was written during World War II, and so therefore it's quite old, it holds up tremendously well. Anyways, it's been Liam with Liam's Lyceum. Hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know if you've read this, and if you're a fan of Leiber like I am. Anyways, I'll catch you next time.